Oh, what a treat to welcome Jeff Marek to the program. The new show, The Sheet, begins on the Daily Face-Off YouTube channel on the 2nd of December. Yeah. Marek is back and joins us now on WST. Jeff, how are you?
Hustler, what's going on today? A pleasure. The pleasure is all mine to be on with you. How's it going, bud?
You know what? Hey, things are good in the peg right now. I mean, the Jets are rolling. The vibes are high in the Winnipeg Sports Talk chat on a daily basis. And listen, we're looking forward to a back-to-back this week against a couple teams that actually have had very, very disappointing starts in Pittsburgh and Nashville. Yes. You know, I want to talk about the junior hockey scenario landscape that's changing, certainly the upcoming Four Nations, but I mean, it's been a minute since we've heard from you. How about those Jets? What have you thought about the 16-3 start?
First of all, I love this story. Anyone that's known me for any length of time knows my affinity for this organization and this team. And there's a lot of players, you know, when you know this, Hustler, like when you work in this industry, even if you don't cheer for teams, you can cheer for a lot of players. And there's a lot of players on that Winnipeg Jets team that I have a lot of time for. But by and large, I'll tell you what, here's who I feel best for. Winnipeg Jets fans who are easily, and again, we saw it this year, Jake Ottinger, the most creative fans in the NHL, full stop, period, last call, lights on, everybody get out of the saloon. This is a fan base that, you know, from Ontario, you know, I used to play in this hockey league, which was all artists. It was like musicians, it was comedians, and by and large, like so many people in this league were from Manitoba, specifically Winnipeg. And what they kept impressing upon me is they kept saying, like, you don't understand it. Like, one of the best kept artistic and creative secrets in this country is Winnipeg, and the entire province are some of the most creative people in Canada. And I'm so glad that we see that spelled out in hockey. No fan base do better chants. No fan base has better insults. Like, there's always a standard, oh, ref, you suck. Like, okay, well, I'll move on. Like, Winnipeg Jets fans take it to a whole new creative level. Like, they've thought about this, and they all get on board. These are the people that I feel best about with Winnipeg's great start. Listen, I feel great for Kevin Cheveldayoff because with wins comes fans. With wins comes success. And even though they're not going to continue on playing like this, much like the Carolina Hurricanes aren't going to continue this torrid start, there's going to be, you know, a little bit of regression here coming up, I think, for both teams. What the Winnipeg Jets are doing is they're banking points for the dark days on the horizon. Like, they're going to go through a losing streak. They're going to go on a streak where they lose, 6 of 7. It's going to happen. But what they're doing is making that buffer. They have a points buffer right now. I know you can't say you can make the playoffs in November, but look at it right now. Barring a major collapse, the Winnipeg Jets have already made the playoffs.
Well, and you know what's funny, Jeff, is that this team was 4th overall last year, but everyone remembered how they got steamrolled in those 4 games after winning game 1 against Colorado. And it's quite clear that they were chewing on it, and it has motivated and driven them as a team. But at the same time, it seemed like most of the hockey world had written this team off before they even dropped a puck on the season.
And, I think a lot of that is, and sometimes the best moves you make are the ones that you don't. I know that there's a lot of reasons, but Kevin Cheveldayoff is also a very patient general manager. There was a coach decision, of course, but, Kevin Cheveldayoff is a candidate for the general manager of the year, as is Eric Tulsky in Carolina. Kevin Cheveldayoff, from a roster construction, player person, all of that, he didn't do anything this summer. Like, there was nothing, there was no major surgery, Cole Perfetti's got a solid spot. Some players left that were rentals. But by and large, Kevin Cheveldayoff, to your point, Hustler, looked at this and said, this is still a very good team. Why am I gonna tinker with this thing until there's any specific need to do so? I don't want to take this thing off the road. I don't want to steer this thing into the ditch. This is still a really good team. And we get to, insert a sort of injection of youth. Like, I'm a big Cole Perfetti guy. Hustler, I love this kid. I love him for a lot of reasons. I watch him a lot in junior. And then I love that he was the Dale Hawerchuk pick. After, the greatest Winnipeg Jet of all time passed away, was his wife that made the pick. It was a beautiful family moment. So I've always had that. And Dale was always one of my favorite hockey players. I've always had that sort of emotional, maybe he's irrational, but that emotional attachment to Cole Perfetti through the Hawerchuk family. And just seeing, what the future is for the Winnipeg Jets with players like Cole Perfetti, who wants to be there for a long time. Like, I'm of the belief that if they put 8 years in front of him in the summer, and it wasn't a bridge deal, he would have looked at it and said, like, that's the number for me. Like, I want to be here a long time. Cheveldayoff has been impressive here. And I know you look at some GMs and, you got to stay active. You got to keep moving. You don't want any rust to start on the team, but he's realized this is a good squad and I'm not going to move it an inch to the left or an inch to the right. It's a good team. And by the way, it helps when you have Connor Hellebuck as well.
Yeah, 2 Vezinas and counting right now, considering the way that he's played so far. And I mean, it's helped the blue line. I mean, Neil Pionk seems like a different player this year.
Doesn't he?
Well, for sure. And Dylan Sandberg, and it's crazy. Both of these guys from a small town, the same small town in Minnesota. But Sandberg moving up to the second pairing has completely taken the added responsibility and ran with it. And it's made Neil a better player. And the Jets really needed that because we've seen him play at a high level, very inconsistent. And I think dealing with injuries the last couple of years, which has hurt him. And he's been great.
Can I mention one thing here? Whenever I talk about the Winnipeg Jets, I always try to go out of my way to mention one person, and that is Rick Bowness. Now, this is Scott Arniel's team. We all know that. He's got 2 hands on the wheel. This is his squad. But, much like he did in Dallas before Pete DeBoer took over, I know not a lot of players necessarily enjoy the discipline of how Rick Bowness coaches or expects his players to play. Like, I'll just flat out, like, a lot of what Rick Bowness wants players to do isn't fun. Okay. But there's I look at the Winnipeg Jets this year, and it all starts with this defensive foundation that, yeah, of course, Scott Arniel was on the bench for as well. But I look at it and I say, all of this is possible because they have built into them a defensive responsibility that was placed there by Rick Bowness. Like, I don't know that we talk enough about, the good that Rick Bowness has done around the NHL for the number of years that he was with the league. Whether it was, helping, turn Victor Hedman into someone who was skeptical and cynical about coaches into, one of the best defensemen of this generation, to what he did in a very difficult time for the Dallas Stars, and how he got them to play a more responsible brand of hockey. And he's done so as well, I think, for the Winnipeg Jets. There's still the sort of the ghost of Bones here, Hustler, on the Winnipeg Jets squad, as I see it, because I think the foundation of this entire team is they're really responsible defensively. It's real simple, right? Puck goes in, puck goes out. Puck goes in, puck goes out. Like, that's the Winnipeg Jets.
Well, and I mean, he authored the biggest culture change in the history of this franchise in the 2.0 era, and it's not even close. And you saw last week when the Jets were down in Florida, when he popped in to see the team, just how much the group from Scott Arniel to the players still love the guy. And you were definitely right. Hey, while we're on the Jets, you mentioned Cole Perfetti with the connection to Dale Hawerchuk. I mean, Mark Scheifele was the first one that, of course, played for him and was the Jets' first ever draft pick. 2 years ago, I think many of us thought that he was going to be elsewhere, and he signed the contract. All of that's in the rearview mirror, and he has been, I mean, he's certainly been a different player the last couple of seasons, especially this year. What have you thought of Scheifele leading the way for Winnipeg, and will he be a member of Canada and the Four Nations, along with potentially Josh Morrissey?
Oh, wow. I'm glad we're going to get the Four Nations, because there's one point that I think we might sort of all be sleeping on here, but want to get that get to that in a second, Hustler. The thing that I see about Mark Scheifele's game, since he played for the Barrie Colts in the OHL, Winnipeg 2.0's first ever draft pick, when everybody in Winnipeg was screaming for Sean Couturier, and they ended up taking, what is this Mark Scheifele guy? We wanted Sean Couturier. Look who's laughing now. It's the Winnipeg Jets, and have been for a number of years. Here's what I like about Scheifele. Scheifele's game continues to get better and more detailed. Part of that is the Winnipeg Jets. Part of that is Mark Scheifele himself, and a large part of that is Adam Oates. A large part of that is Adam Oates. And I'll tell you a story. There was a game, was it 2 or 3 years ago? I was watching, I think it was Minnesota and the New York Rangers. And one of the Minnesota players, might have been Matt Zuccarello, stepped over the blue line, and Jacob Trouba, I think it was Trouba, just crunched him. Like classic Jacob Trouba hit. And I was on my way to a gold medal ceremony for Aaron Ambrose, gold medal defenseman for Team Canada. I was up in her hometown of Keswick, and I was talking to Adam Oates on the phone, and we were talking about that hit. And he said, well, it's really simple. Like, everyone could see that coming. I'm like, how do you see that? Like, I don't understand how that happens at the NHL level. And he said, pull your car over and pull up the hit. So he walked through the hit with me. And what he kept coming to is, When the zone entry was made, the player only had one hand on his stick. And when he got hit, it was the exact moment that he put his bottom hand on the stick. And when he put his bottom hand on the stick, his head went down, albeit for a brief second. And that's where I want to take it to Mark Scheifele. Adam Oates told me he does this drill with a lot of his players, and he works with high-end guys, right? Like this is like Mark Scheifele, like Jack Eichel, like superstars, like multi-million-dollar players. And he says he does this one drill with them that drives them crazy. They hate it, but Adam Oates' idea is you should never get a concussion playing hockey. It is possible to concussion-proof your game. He says, what I do with a lot of these guys, and this is where I want to get the tiny details with Mark Scheifele and all of Adam Oates' clients. What he does, Hustler, can you imagine this? On the ice, standing still, top hand on your stick, what he does is he has the guys practice putting their bottom hand on the stick and not putting their eyes down. It's a natural instinct. You know, everybody listening, watching right now to your show right now, think to yourself, when's the last time you grabbed the stick with your bottom hand and you didn't put your head down, albeit for a brief second? And the guys hate it. And Adam Oates' point is always the same. Do you want to do this drill or do you want to be out of the lineup for a few months with a concussion? He says it's tiny little things like that. And you see it all over the game that all of the Adam Oates clients do. And I see Mark Scheifele as someone who, you know, even though he's not 23 years old anymore, he's still evolving his game. We all know how much he gobbles up. There's some guys that watch hockey at the end when their season is over, and there are some that don't want anything to do with it. Scheifele, as you know, Hustler, is a 24/7, dyed-in-the-wool hockey guy. He pays attention to details now because he's still in his mind needs to improve and get better. And that's why I love Mark Scheifele.
He might watch as much hockey as anybody in the NHL.
I agree.
To be honest with you. And I guess part of that, Jeff, is I think, and we're seeing in his play, and particularly that, I mean, statement game earlier this week against the Panthers with that hat trick. It seems like he is possessed right now to prove that he belongs with Canada's best on that team in February.
Absolutely. To the point about Team Canada, I always like I look at the philosophy of Hockey Canada and how their philosophy going back a number of years has changed from, you know, construct this like an NHL team with four distinct forward lines and three distinct, you know, defense pairs. Whereas, you know, the philosophy for success now more so than ever is skill adapts. And I look at Team Canada or speculate on Team Canada, and I say to myself, okay, the thing about Scheifele is, you know, not only can he play center, but he's quite happy on a team like this playing wing as well, following the motto, skill adapts. For me, I have Mark Scheifele on Team Canada. I don't know that he ends up being there. I do wonder, considering this is a really quick tournament, I wonder if, and this is where I'll go back to another Winnipeg, I wonder if there's a place in this tournament for Adam Lowry, as we talk about a place for Brandon Hagel, as we talk about a place for Tom Wilson. Now, I wonder in a short tournament like this, if you look at someone like Adam Lowry and say, that guy could be really important here for a team.
Well, I cannot wait. We got less than 2 weeks until we hear who's named to the team. And I'm sure the first week of the new show will be dominated by Four Nations talk.
It's going to be a lot.
Jeff, one other thing while we have you on, you have covered and been on top of junior hockey and hockey development as well as anybody in the space for a number of years. There's been some significant changes south of the border to eligibility for NCAA hockey players. It's going to affect the Canadian Hockey League. It will affect the NHL, and it will affect development. I mean, this is a big, wide-ranging, but can you, in a nutshell, can you dumb it down for people that maybe aren't aware of what's happened and how this is going to play out here in Canada, particularly amongst the CHL and, for instance, around here for teams like the Brandon Wheat Kings?
It's funny too, because whenever I talk to anybody about this and they explain something to me, I always say to them the same thing you just said to me, is saying, talk to me like I'm 5. Because this one is like, there's a real fog over all of it. And we really don't know exactly what it's going to look like, this new development model. But for your listeners and viewers, Hustler, So essentially, NCAA has changed their definition of a CHL player. This is CHL players without NHL contracts, and that's the caveat. So if you don't have an NHL contract, you are now eligible to compete in Division I NCAA hockey. Which means from a development point of view, players could leave the CHL early. You're playing in Medicine Hat, you're playing in Brandon with the Wheat Kings, you're playing Lethbridge or Swifty or whatever. You can leave now to go play in NCAA Division I. So what does that mean for this redefinition? It means it's tough times for the BCHL. They were essentially a super tier 2 league. They're essentially a super junior A league that was drawing players from all over Canada. And we're starting to see an attrition. I guess the highest profile player that has left there to join the Kitchener Rangers of the OHL is Jack Pridham, a third-round draft pick of the Chicago Blackhawks. We expect there to be more. The USHL has seen some attrition now. Some players, mainly Canadian, but some Americans as well, have left that league to go to major junior hockey in the CHL. So right away, a short term, as we look for winners and losers, the CHL are getting more and more players in the league from the BCHL and the USHL. Long term, it's a better development model for players, specifically the elite players, and specifically players that are caught in that, well, he's probably too good for the CHL, but he's not eligible to play in the American Hockey League yet, and he's not quite there for the NHL. Now they have a college option. Now they can go play, Nodak or Minnesota or BU or BC, Colorado, wherever. From a development point of view, it's wonderful. I wonder about junior hockey operators in this country and what it means if you start to see star players leaving early to go to NCAA. We know how much, they rely on quality 19-year-olds in the CHL. You do wonder if the CHL starts to skew younger because of it. Instead of being a 16 to 20 league, is it a 15 to 19 league? We wonder what this is going to mean for the CHL NHL agreement. We wondered what this is going to mean even for the NHL draft. What we're seeing right now is seismic change, Hustler, in the development model. And you're right. The effects will be felt not just from leagues, not just from players, not just the NHL, not just operators. Fans will have different experiences as well. And all of this has to be settled and sorted out by next August. Good luck, everybody.
Yeah, I'm particularly just, from an NHL perspective, interested to see what happens with, the CHL agreement. We've seen a guy like Colby Barlow who, had to go back to junior this year. And this has happened a number of times when the Jets have taken players that might not be ready for the NHL.
Yep.
And unlike a Chaz Lucius who signs a contract, he can go right into play with the Manitoba Moose.
Yep.
That hasn't been the case. And I wouldn't be surprised if that does get changed at some point in the relatively near future.
Can I make that's an excellent point? The NHL, as long as there was a lawsuit that's sort of started the ball rolling here. As long as there's a lawsuit, the NHL is not getting involved. Once the lawsuit goes away, Hustler, then I expect, to be honest with you, Hustler, I kind of expect, and this will fall into the in the dossier of Bill Daly, the deputy commissioner. I expect the NHL to kind of come in and say, okay, this is what we're doing. This is, they consult with the CHL, USHL, NCAA, all of it. But I wonder if at the end of all of this, all of these decisions are going to be made in large part by one of the leagues that helps pay the freight, and that's the NHL.
Jeff Marek is with us. Jeff, it's so great to have you back. Cannot wait for the new show, and it's great to have you on the program. Fill people in again on the sheet, where and when it drops, and how they can find it on a daily basis.
Okay, so right now I've got a sort of teaser preview up there with an interview with Dan McKenzie, the president of the CHL. Shot that a couple of days ago in a downtown Toronto restaurant. Also, the show itself, The Daily Show, kicks off on December the 2nd at our Daily Face-Off YouTube channel. That'll be live in and around an hour. Hustler's an hour-ish. I'm sort of telling people, we'll see what the news of the day brings. The nice thing about it is I'm not sort of married to any specific.
Beauty of the space, Jeff.
Oh, buddy, you know it, bud. You know the deal. There's so much freedom involved in it. And then it's going to be available wherever you get your podcast. So your Apple Pods, your Spotifys, etc.
Cannot wait for it, Jeff. Thanks so much. Best of luck with the new show, and say hi to the DFO guys. Really looking forward to this getting going.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for your time and your audience's attention. I really appreciate it. Hustler, buzz back anytime.